Welcome to the College Knowledge Podcast, sponsored by the College Planning Network and Paradigm Financial Group. Whether you're searching for that right fit college, applying to college, or figuring out how you're going to afford it all, you're in the right place. You'll hear from deans, admissions counselors, student athletes, and scholars from esteemed universities and colleges around the country. We'll dig deep to uncover their insight and unique experiences. So whether you're a student gearing up for college or a parent with college-bound kids, sit back, relax, and listen. Like you, we have lots of questions. Our guests have the answers, and we're excited to share them with you. Let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to College Knowledge. I'm your host, Dave Kozak, alongside Mr.
Joe, the College Pro.
Joe Kerns.
Dave, the CEO. Always good to be with you, sir.
Today, we're interviewing Jayson Weingarten. Jayson, welcome to the show, first of all. Give us a little background, what you've done, what you do now, and give us the short version of, I guess, your credentialing, maybe.
I've worked in the undergraduate admissions office at the University of Pennsylvania, a number of different roles in that office. Realized that my passion was not necessarily in climbing the ladder of academia, not necessarily ending up as the dean or provost, but I still love education. And so I switched to the other side of the desk, and now I work as a senior admission consultant with Ivy Coach, helping families to earn admission to the colleges of their dreams. The company, we've been around since the mid-90s, really helping families to understand the often opaque nature of college admissions, helping them, again, earn admission to the schools of their dreams year in and year out.
Going from, I'll call it the corporate side, to the business side of this, what's the major difference between being on the admission side as an officer at a school versus someone helping and coaching families into trying to get admissions to those schools?
It's definitely who you are working for. Ultimately, the goal of an admissions officer is to provide the university with an input. Who are those best crop of students that are going to earn admission? And an admissions officer does not really care about who the individual student is. Yes, they can fall in love with a certain student. They can feel compelled. Oh my gosh, little Johnny, this is a great student. We need to have him. Little Clara, we love her. Fantastic. But by and large, the admissions officer is trying to find the best cohort to bring in and doesn't necessarily care about the individual student. If all of the admissions decisions were lost a week before they were meant to go out and the process had to be rerun, it's very likely that the different students would be admitted to that incoming class. And that's not to say that it's random. It's just to say that sometimes you read a student and they get in the class, and sometimes you read a student and they don't get in the class. And the colleges will be the first ones to tell you that they could admit the incoming class however many times over, how many tens of thousands of qualified applicants could get in, but some do and some don't. So that's on the admission side. When I'm working for families, my goal is not the macro incoming class, but it is that micro student, helping that one individual student to earn admission. It's something that even a guidance counselor at a high school is not going to necessarily care about. Because again, the guidance counselor at a high school, they're getting paid by the high school. They care about the overall acceptance rate of that year's crop of high school seniors. They're not necessarily caring about the individual student and kind of what individual school they go to. Me, when I'm working for a family, I care about that student a lot, and I care about the end results of where that student goes a great deal as well.
The big question on my side is, what does it take to get into the Ivy? You work for a company that's called Ivy Coach, right? What does it take?
So I would say that what it takes is not just A's, but A pluses, not just high 1500s, mid to high 1500s. It takes not just everything being great, not giving opportunities for an admissions officer to say no. Part of the job that I have is helping to really extenuate the great qualities of a student and helping them to really shine and be compelling, as well as to minimize the opportunities and the negatives that an admissions officer could find to poke holes in that student's case. Every student is going to obviously have good things about them, and every student's going to obviously have bad things about them. And so much of life is like that, pros and cons. The goal of me and what I do is to help really extenuate the good so that the good is overwhelming and help minimize and blunt the bad. I think when it comes to the Ivy League, that room for error is so much less, that the goods have to be that much great and the bads have to really not be that horrible.
When we talk about Ivy Leagues, I think that there's obviously obviously prestige that goes towards it, but I also think that there is some preconceived notions that if you go to an Ivy League school, you'll be successful in life. And I think that it's put on a mountaintop and it may not actually be the best fit schools for students. When you are working with a family, if they come to you and say, yeah, we're looking at Dartmouth, Yale, Brown, and then you're looking at the student, they're saying, well, that's really not the best learning environment for you. Are you guys offering other schools that potentially could be a good social academic fit for them, and obviously financially, because it's something that's affordable? How do you guys attack that?
Absolutely. I would even be the first one to tell you, even though this is the world that I live in professionally, even as someone who has a master's degree in education concentrated in higher education, I don't think that everyone should go to college. Anytime you say everyone should do something, that's probably not a good idea. Everyone should go to an Ivy League school. That also certainly can't be the case. There are plenty of schools out there. Our name is Ivy Coach, but we're helping families earn admission to well beyond those 8 schools that play in that athletic conference. There are plenty of students who I just know, yes, they could get in, but are they going to really succeed and thrive and grow at that school? So there's plenty of other schools that are the near Ivies that we help families earn admission to all the time. There's plenty of students that the best option is to take advantage of the faculty staff benefit that a parent has to go to the in-state Power Public and be in the honors college and then swing back and work with us for graduate school to go to a top law or business program. That certainly is, when we're thinking about the kind of long-term planning for a student, is certainly part of the equation. And there's plenty of different studies out there that do show the value of an Ivy League education. Clearly, the value of an Ivy League education, depending on the study you look at, is unquestionable. The opportunities, not the guarantees, but the opportunities that it unlocks is without any doubt. When you then start to add in potential for student debt and cost of attendance and all that, it does start to eat away at the lifelong salary increase that one could expect. But for most students, going into the Ivy League is that opportunity to bump elbows with the future leaders and to be connected into a network that is going to unlock many doors ahead.
We talk a lot about the networking at the college level, and there are schools known for it. Obviously, the Ivies are one of them, or a group of them, I would say, but there's a lot of schools out there with networks. I always talk about the Penn State network just because it's massive. For listeners, the idea is in higher education is to either get to the next level. And for some people, the next level is a job. For some people, the next level is additional education, master's degrees, doctoral degrees, whatever it may be. But the network is huge, right? And so for the students that are listening, when you get on campus, network, that is the network. Talk to the professors, find the mentors, find the people that are going to help guide you through the next step in this process, because you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes it's that mentor, it's that network that says, hey, you should look at this and think about this, and it becomes that future career path. Are there schools that are known for better networks than others, in your opinion?
It really comes down to the student and what they want to do. A student who is really politically minded, who really is wanting to go enter Washington, D.C., so to speak, the kind of school that's going to provide a powerful network for that student is very different than the engineer that wants to end up in Silicon Valley or someone who wants to make it big on Wall Street. So there is, generally speaking, some schools that will have a stronger network than others, just across the board. That being said, within that, when you're then splitting hairs and finding slight differences between top schools, yes, there are going to be some that are a little bit stronger in area A than area B. Personally, I think that because so many students are going to switch their major, so many students are going to sit underneath the oak tree in the quad and ponder life and wonder what they want to do and where they can make an impact and so on and so forth, you should really think about the school and the strength of the school and the reputation of the school, and not necessarily the individual major. I don't know how many people know, but one of the top schools for pre-med is the University of Scranton in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. If you want to be a doctor, I'd still recommend going to Harvard if you had the opportunity over Scranton. Nothing bad about Scranton, it's just not Harvard. And so I think that there's some schools that, are great in certain areas, but by and large, if you have the opportunity to go to a really top school, that's an opportunity that's hard to turn down, even if it's going to be only an A in terms of the network and not like an A plus in terms terms of the network.
I have a couple questions. The first is from the Ivy League side. What do you think is the biggest thing that parents probably miss? We talk to a lot of parents, Dave, and obviously the parents think that their kids are the smartest, that they're the best, and hey, they got a 4.5 GPA and they scored a 1500 on the SAT. They're going to get in wherever they apply, right? What do you think is the biggest thing that maybe has to, I'll say, bring those parents back down to earth? What should those parents know throughout this application process?
Two things. The first is just the scale of how many other students are like their students out there. Again, there's going to be 10,000 students that are going to go to an Ivy League school every year. There's nearly 3 million students graduating high school this year, every year for the next however many years. The scale that we're talking about is, I think, just not comprehensible to most people just because our brains have not evolved to think in that kind of scale. When I am talking to a family and they say that they have a student that has the great grades and the great test scores and the great extracurriculars and that we're sure that their recommendation letters are going to be great and everything's great, great, great. That's great. But at some point, great is only so good. And we're really looking for exceptional and that next level great. So I think that's one, just the understanding the scale that a student's up against. The second one is understanding how a student sometimes can come off. The average application is a dozen or 2 pages, between a page of a transcript, 2 pages of the activities, kind of a resume, page of test scores, 650-word essay. You have seen your child grow up over the course of their 18 years. And sometimes families, they just completely botch putting down on those 18 pages what are the most important 18 pages for admissions, trying to capture 18 years of a life. I'll see families just talk about how a student was solving Rubik's cubes when they were 3. That's not relevant, not compelling, bordering on the line of cliche and in a negative. And so I think that families just don't understand how best to represent their case for admission. Even if they have the good ingredients in the kitchen, in the pantry, sometimes they just botch putting the ingredients on the page.
Interesting. Well, so in your experience, what's something that you've seen take somebody from the borderline to the no at the Ivy level, right? I'm sure you talked about not presenting yourself the wrong way or not giving them a reason to say no. What's something that would get them to say no? Let's say you got the grades perfect on the SAT, you've got 80,000 extracurriculars. What stops?
Yeah. Sometimes it comes down to, as the kids would say, the vibes. Just an admissions officer is reading the application and just thinks to themselves that, you know what, I've just not seen the personal qualities that are going to make this student a great roommate, a great friend, a great romantic partner for someone to meet their college sweetheart. Sometimes it just comes down to that. When students in their applications feel like they're up against such insurmountable competition and they just need to brag and they just need to boast and they just need to talk about how great they are and all of their accomplishments and all the things that they've done, whether they're relevant to college or not. Things like that get in the way and just are ways that students will trip over themselves thinking that they're being impressive. But there's nothing that admissions officers hate more than when a student is seemingly doing something because it sounds impressive or looks impressive, as opposed to doing something because they're passionate and they just feel this inner desire to do something. When I'm reading applications, there will be families who will go at their own in the early round. They will get rejected. It'll be Christmas Eve. They'll wonder, how could this ever have happened? And they'll get in touch and I'll review their application and I'll just read out loud their essay and I'll stop every few sentences and I'll just say, like, this is how an admissions officer is thinking this. And I'll just see the faces of families just turn aghast and thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that this was what I wrote. And they've had this essay that they've perfectly manicured over the past few months, and they've completely lost sight of the fact that they're trying to get an admissions officer to root for them. You're not going to get someone to root for you when you talk about that you've traveled to 100+ different countries. That doesn't make you likable. Most admissions officers are making $50,000 or so a year. They're not able to travel to 100+ countries. It just makes you unlikable. It sounds impressive. Wow, 100 countries, this person's so worldly and cultured, but in reality, it's not impressive. And I would say not something that you should tell admissions officers, even if you have been to every single country in the world.
It's interesting too, because what you've sort of re-illuminated for me is the idea of the humanity behind it, right? You're presenting yourself to another human in some capacity, and human has the power to put the stamp on the paper, for lack of a better expression, and say, yes, that's the connection you're trying to make, right? It's
absolutely
with the individual. And not all schools do it that way. Some schools are more processing and number driven, but I had a conversation conversation, one of our earlier podcasts, and the one admissions officer was talking about, like, she has the files and she's in her bedroom and she's got them spread out all over her bed, and she's actually weighing student one, student two, and going through this almost interpersonal like conversation about the kid to herself to try and figure out who it is. Great point on forget about the braggadociousness. There's no space for that. You're trying to connect with the reader in a meaningful way. And I love the way you said it in terms of you're trying to get someone to pull for you, someone to be there for you, someone to be your advocate.
Yeah. So obviously there's mistakes made along the way. Our big focus is, again, from a financial standpoint, but we want kids to, again, get into those dream schools where we want to make sure that mom and dad aren't sacrificing retirement to do it, or kids graduate with a ton of debt is a big focus for us. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but how important is it for families to realize that you probably need help throughout this process, especially if you're looking at a prestigious school, like an elite school, low admissions rate? To go at it alone, you think that there's success on that front, or do you think it's more the people that really win at this game are the ones that do seek out help?
It's no different than any other facet of life. I'm sure there are people who create New Year's resolutions to get in shape and have that rockin' summer beach bod. And they're able to have the discipline to eat right and diet and exercise and go to the gym and this, that. And then by Memorial Day, they're looking great. I'm sure those people exist, few and far between. Most people, they have a lawyer look over some sort of contract. Most people have an accountant help with their taxes. Most people have a personal trainer help them in the gym. I think that if you are really serious about something, then you really need to get that expert advice. I think those who do seek out the expert advice, they are able to be more successful in court. They're able to do better with their taxes and have it be less horrible of a situation. They're able to end up ready for the summer. I don't think it's any different in college admissions. I'm sure there are some students that get in. When you look at some of the student newspapers, and I think this is something that's a little bit more pulled for MBA programs than it is even at the undergraduate level, but a very high percent of those students who get into top schools do have some sort of help outside of just their high school guidance counselor. And again, I love the high school guidance counselors. I wish we had more high school guidance counselors. I wish the guidance counselor caseloads were lower, just like I wish there was more arts in the schools and all of the wonderful resources that we would put as a society in the school. But the admissions situation for most high school students is not going to be good in terms of the advice they get from the guidance counselor, just because the guidance counselor at most schools is overworked, a little bit uninformed, and at the end of the day, not necessarily looking out for the best interests of that individual student. That's really, again, where I come in and where an elite college consultant really does help.
One of the frustrations from my perspective, being in this industry the same as you are, is the scandal. We'll talk about the big scandal that occurred with the admissions. There's scandal all over the place in this, and people aren't listening to those that actually know what they're talking about all the time. And I mean, I have seen some, in the last 5 years, I've seen some crazy acceptances at schools where I didn't think a student had a shot. And I've seen some, the quote unquote safety school, which PSA for everyone, never tell a school that it's your safety school, but the not get into a school that, I mean, they, for all intents and purposes, they were well exceeded any necessary achievement level to get into.
No, definitely. A lot of schools, and this is a trend, I think, certainly this past year, and maybe even start with the pandemic, just given the uncertainty that was around the pandemic. And I think now that there's certainly been a stepwise up in the number of different schools where students are applying, and a lot of schools using their wait lists a lot more. If a school just does not know they're going to put a student on the wait list, they're going to defer a student in the early round just because they want to see how much does that student really love them and care and want to go. They know that the number of schools that the average student is applying to has increased significantly. Are you just one more applicant? Are they just one more click of the common application? Or are they a school that you really actually want to go and have thought of and really have done the homework and thinking to actually want to be there for 4 years? And so, yes, don't tell schools that they're the backup, they're the safety. This is other advice for students. Don't tell someone that they're like your backup for prom. Can you imagine if you went up to someone in the lunchroom and you said, hey, you're really great. I think we get along perfectly. If, this person and that that person, if they don't want to go with me to the big sock hop for homecoming, then I'm going to ask you to the dance, right? You would never do that. You have to think that you are dating these colleges. You're going out on first date. You want to talk about how wonderful you plus the college, how wonderful that relationship can be. And you have to be like the bachelor, the bachelorette. You have to kind of date 10, 20 different colleges at the same time. So yeah, don't tell them that you're the backup. That seems like a bad thing. And also they can tell if you think you're the backup, even if you don't explicitly say it. You can certainly guess when a student is just like honing it in. This year, now that Georgetown is on the Common App and they are one click more to apply, I bet they're going to see a huge increase in the number of students who are applying. And I think that they're going to see a huge decrease in the average quality of the supplement that they receive, because it's just one more click. And oh, if I'm going to apply to one more school, Georgetown, that seems like a great school, one more for me to apply to. But you know what? If you're not willing to put in the few hours of work in that relationship, then what does that say about your willingness to actually succeed there for 4 years, a very important 4 years of your life?
Yeah, there's a phrase we use, don't fall in love with a school until it falls in love with you. But more importantly, treat every single school that you have an interest in applying to like it is the school for you, because you didn't even tour the school, right? Or you didn't click on the link that was the free application version, or you didn't go to some event somewhere or a virtual environment. Like, they're measuring the clicks the same way a business does. What's the open rate? Was that? And so there are more chances to sort of show your cards in a bad way than ever before. But I also think there's more chances to show your cards in a good way at the same time, but do it for whatever schools you're interested in.
Yeah, I've always looked at the business side, and I've never used the analogy of the prom, which I think is great. I try to tell parents, think about it as a job interview, good resume. And if you're trying to hire people, you get a couple of people that show up for the interview and that's it. And you got somebody else that's communication. Oh, did they open that email that I sent to them? Who are you going to hire? As far as you have to understand that there is a business side to this.
Yeah, could you imagine? Well, I interviewed with Wyeth. I'm really looking for them, but you guys are my backup.
Think about it from a little bit more of a business standpoint. Sure. is the analogy I've always tried to use, especially even with student interviews. If a student has to give an interview at a college, like, yeah, it's great to go in there with great answers, but I think when you show you've done your research and you come with good questions, that's what makes a good job interview. Hey, I appreciate this. I've researched you guys here. Can you tell me a little bit more about this? It shows your interest, not just, as we were saying, the braggadocious. I'm not here to just tell you how great I am. I want to show you I'm actually interested in attending. Can you answer some questions for me? That's how I've always tried to explain a little bit, use that analogy versus the prom, but I like the prom one.
And to your earlier point about what does it take for the Ivy League in that next level, when we're talking about giving reasons to say yes and removing the reasons to say no, those are the reasons to say no. Right? Is a school going to admit a student just because they clicked on a few emails? Of course not, right? That is the 10th, 11th, 12th criteria, even beyond that on the list. But when you're talking about these most highly selective schools and you are evaluating the handful of candidates for that final spot, if that even happens, and you're looking at students that have the same test scores and the same grades, what's the difference? And it just seems like one student is going to be a better roommate, or one student just seems like they're more interested in actually attending, or it just seems like one student is a little bit more mature and serious about all of this. That is going to be the difference maker. And yes, all of those things, all of the small things make sense. And again, if you're not willing to invest the time to do the small things, you should not be investing 4 years of your life in that school. That's a perfect way to cut down on the college list. If you're applying to all 8 Ivy League schools and there's 2, 1, 3, however many that just seem a little bit more of a chore to stay in touch with, you know what? Maybe those are the 1, 2, 3 that you like cull from the herd in favor of some of the other schools.
So I got to ask this one because this is specific to the world right now. COVID really played crazy with testing. Obviously, SAT, ACT got a jolt. Schools had to react, and we've made some, I don't know if they're assumptions, but they're educated sort of distinguishment about you go test optional, the stay rate at different schools goes down, their retention rates, or they're losing retention rates. SATs are coming back in. SAT is now redeveloped as a test. How are schools dealing with the idea that, I mean, in fact, it's an easier test, right? There's no question it's easier. I mean, they took essays from 500 to 750 words down to 25 to 125 words. They're doing like sentence passages. How are Ivy Leagues and schools like that looking at this now?
I think the same way they've always been looking at these tests and these other metrics. They expect and they want to see that students have their test scores, that students are still scoring in those upper percentiles of the test scores. The test makers, the ACT company, the College Board, they're going to say that they are adjusting the tests based on new methodologies, new sciences based on the modern world and what actually predicts success in college. It seems that these are two companies. You think Pepsi versus Coke is an epic battle. These are two companies that are in the streets fighting each other for that extra incremental test. They're combining for billions of dollars of revenue. So they are businesses when you're talking about this. They've done a good job of marketing all of those things, but in reality, yes, the tests are different and probably easier than they have been. All the more reason for students to continue to take these seriously. Test optional, test blind, whatever marketing and PR spin was put, that was all it ever was. The fact that so many of the top schools are either back to requiring the tests or are about to be back to requiring the test just shows that was a sham. The few colleges that were brave enough to release their data on students that did and did not submit test scores clearly showed that students who did submit test scores earn admission at a much higher rate than students who did not submit test scores. And of course, students who submitted high test scores earn admission at rates higher than students who submit lower test scores. I mean, yes, this is a part of the application. It's always been a part of the application. It's a part of the application that it remains just as important as it did a decade ago, a generation ago. And students, families, they need to approach these tests with the same seriousness that they can. Just because you could apply to a school without test scores doesn't mean that you should. There were so many students in the pandemic, I call them the squeakers. They thought they could squeak by without submitting test scores and all this. It was good PR and marketing for schools to increase the number of applicants who were applying, but they were just increasing the number of applications that they were receiving from largely underqualified students who really didn't have a shot of admission. My students, they're going to be submitting test scores.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. Couldn't agree more. The crazy part about that whole marketing PR experiment, whatever you want to call it, there were some schools that accepted students in a test optional, like a true test optional, and the writing's on the wall. They didn't perform at the school that they got into, because you have this dichotomy where you have a student that gets a 4.6 in high school and then shoots 1,000 on the SAT. If you know those two things are not equal to one another, that's grade inflation, that's whatever it is on the school side. You get someone with a 4.6, you're expecting a 1,300 or higher, maybe even a 1,400 or higher. That's commensurate. When you don't have that data to say this 4.6 is not truly a 4.6, and this essay was crafted by, they paid someone to write it, or whatever the case may be, right? There were a lot of cases where people were at a school that they could not hack it. It caused mental stress, mental burden, whatever it is. So I think we're going to see SATs fully back without question.
Definitely. And whether it's the SAT, the ACT, these tests, they look the same. I would encourage people, you can look at, there was a study done between students who did and did not submit test scores and were admitted with or without test scores at Texas, showing that it's basically a point difference in GPA. Doesn't everyone think that is information that an officer would want to know what someone's test scores was? That's why at a school like Georgetown, it's 90% of the students who are admitted submit test scores. I think at Notre Dame, it was in the mid 80s. I mean, admitted students are submitting test scores.
The one thing I remember when the SAT, and the thing that went through my head earlier about Georgetown doing the Common App. So what went through my head immediately when you said that ties into the SAT, because a lot of schools, they're still test optional because they saw their applicant number drive up, not accepting more students. So that means the admissions percentage, the admissions rate goes down, makes them look a little bit more prestigious. I'm looking at Georgetown, at least the last number I had was their acceptance rate was about, I think, 13% overall. All of a sudden you get, as you mentioned, hey, Common App, there's going to be a lot more applicants. Doesn't mean they're accepting more students. Is that potentially a marketing move to try and get from 13 to 7 and even look more prestigious?
The Pope went to Villanova and not Georgetown. Georgetown needs to figure out something to do. The student that's going to apply to one more Jesuit school, right? I mean, anytime a school is going to change their application, usually schools, 99 times out of 100, are changing in the direction of making it easier to apply, lowering the bar, if you want to call it that, to apply. If it used to be 3 essays, now it's 2. If it used to be requiring the SAT subject tests, 3 of them, then it turned into 2 of them. Now the subject tests don't even exist. Going test optional, being on the Common App, changing the word count of the supplementary essays from 600 words to 400 to 200 to just having a bunch of the kind of small quick hits. And yes, you're still going to get data and you're still getting information as an admissions office on students who are applying, but you're just making it that much easier to apply. And this is the way that schools are, I think, artificially lowering their acceptance rate. Now, a school like Georgetown, if you are a great student, an A+ student, and you're looking at where to go, you've probably heard of Georgetown. When you are lowering the standard, lowering the bar, making it easier to apply, you are going to get a lot more students to raise their hand, to put their name in the hat, but you're probably not going to get the strongest applicants with every incremental 1,000 students who apply. And yes, you're going to decrease the acceptance rate from the low teens into the single digits, but is it actually going to be that much harder for an A+ student to apply and get in when now they're going to get an inundation with a lot of A-, B+ kind of candidates? I don't necessarily think so. And to the point on the Georgetown joining the Common App, my first thought when I heard that was someone needs to check out and see and do a wellness check on Charlie Deacon, because he's been saying no Common App forever. But I guess the pressure for the powers that may be was just too great at Georgetown to say, we got to do something. We're flatlining here in the admissions numbers when everyone else is up and away.
We don't talk a lot about the true business end of college, the back end. You have no idea what the Common App is doing for Georgetown. You have no idea how that whole arrangement came to be, or who's a player in that, lobbying, who wasn't, what promise did they give, who was the savvy marketer that came in and said, hey, if you just say yes to the Common App, you're going to get another 5,000 applicants. You're going to drive your number down to a single digit, and the U.S. News and World Report's going to bump you up to one of the most prestigious in the country, right? So you just don't know that stuff. Yeah, this has been great stuff. What do you think is the differentiator? We got the perfect student, perfect grades. They got it. SAT, ACT. This will be my last question. What's a differentiator for someone in the Ivy, or forget the Ivies, let's just say the top 50? What differentiates all the A+ 1,600 students, and what should a student focus on?
We like at Ivy Coach saying that we help make students weird. Not weird for weird's sake, but memorable, different, distinctive. Colleges, they're not looking for the well-rounded student. They are looking for students that have that hook, that spike, that story. They are looking for those specialist applications. The colleges know that they're going to have to take so many students that are either legacies or development cases or from historically underrepresented groups and all this that are going to be well-rounded generalists and all that. And so the students that are the most compelling to college admissions officers, the ones that the admissions officers will go home and when they're asked, hey, did you read about any interesting students today? And they might say, oh my gosh, there actually was this one. It's going to be that student that has that interesting thing that they're focused on, that one way that they want to change the world, that specialization that makes them stand out. We're not talking about having cured cancer. We're not talking about having won the Nobel Peace Prize. We're talking about a student who is very interested in something, that is passionate, that has done what they can as a teenager in high school to start walking down that path, and is showing that early evidence to admissions that they are someone that when they enter that college and they have access to so many more resources and opportunities, that it's going to really propel them and really hockey stick them up into making an impact and really being able to change the world at large, or maybe just the world of that individual department in that individual area. So I think that identifying what are those things, what is that thing singular that a student can be interested in, the things, the plural, that a student can do that kind of propel and push that forward is important. I always think that the different extracurriculars, the different elective, rather than being very disparate, shiny star objects in the sky, it's a lot better when you can connect them into a nice constellation and paint that clearer picture. It just makes it a lot more memorable, and it really helps a student to stand out than just having lots of separate boxes checked.
My last question, a little off topic, but one I wouldn't be happy with if I didn't ask you. Again, being in the chair of undergrad admissions, early decision. Obviously, in our world, there are some risks, especially signing on the dotted line without knowing what the price tag is going to be. There can be financial that might come and it's not affordable, or it's not going to be a good financial fit for a family. But a couple questions on that. Number one, how much does it improve the hypothetical chances? I would ask, number one. But number two, does that potentially put you at risk? Like we were talking about the safety school, the second person you ask to the prom, that if I apply early decision one place and I'm applying 4 other places, and then all of a sudden I don't get in, I get pushed to the regular decision, I get deferred, does that now look poorly? It's like, obviously you guys were our second choice. How do you look at early decision? What should our parents know, the ups and the downs, the pros and the cons of doing ED at schools?
Let's talk about why schools have early decision and then how families can be comfortable making that commitment. So all you need to know is that Michigan this year is instating an early decision policy. They are tired of only having early action. They are one of the top flagship public schools in the country, certainly a top university. They're tired of students being taken early decision in a binding commitment to peer schools that are private, that have had early decision programs for however long. And Michigan is instating early decision to improve the yield, to protect the students that see themselves as Michigan men that are going to be there in Ann Arbor, that to better compete with their private peers like Northwestern and Duke and some of these others that have had early decision programs. There's a benefit for the school. Chicago, there's too many ways to apply to Chicago. They had early decision, and then they had early action, and then they added ED2, and now they're adding ED0 this year for students that have done different summer programs with them. In addition to regular decision, they have so many ways that if you want to apply, just yes, to help spread out the application so they can start reviewing applications in September, because the number of admissions officers who are there is not widely on the increase like the number of applications on the increase. But if they can spread out when they're reading the applications and get some of them coming in earlier, then they can lighten the load and make January and February suck less. And so they're seeing benefits in having early decision. So colleges have early decision because it benefits them to have students who want to attend, to capture the top students, to spread out just logistically, operationally when they're reading the applications. For families, this is maybe one of the most strategic things that you can do to apply to a school in that early round. And the way to get more comfortable with that is twofold. One is just to realize if you're going to have to decide where to apply by January 1st, you might as well do whatever you can the summer, the spring, leading up to the application season to get comfortable with the school by November 1st. If it means visiting, if it means having more conversations with students, if it means looking at the websites, whatever it might be, do the things now, invest the time now so that you're able to confidently make that decision on what school you like and where you want to apply early. And the other thing, just specifically on the financial piece, is that every school is going to have the net price calculator, and it is federally mandated and federally audited in terms of families being able to go plug in their actual financial information. Don't make it up. You actually sit there with the tax documents and the like and get a sense of what that school's financial assistance package is going to look like between grants and loans, your own expectations, and everywhere in between. That's going to make a family hopefully a lot more confident in knowing what the price tag for a school is going to be. And yes, there are on occasions times when there's a windfall change, something happens, and what number you thought is not going to be the number that actually appears. I know I think 3 or 4 cycles ago, I had a student who was admitted to a top school, and unfortunately the numbers were completely different and it was very problematic. And the student ultimately had to get out of that binding commitment just because the financial parts of it were not working out for that family. And so it does happen, but there are things that a student can do now to become more confident in the school, and that a family can do to financially become more informed about that school.
I am going to disagree with you a little bit, simply because I have yet to see an early decision award match what the net price calculator said. And when we went back to admissions officers, they all said, well, it says on there that it's an estimate and you put money into a pension. We didn't ask about that. And we take the full value of your house. We don't do this. We tell you what your house is worth. So that's why the award is $20,000 less. than what you saw in the net price calculator. I have yet to see a true, I went on the net price calculator, it said it was going to be $30,000. I applied early decision and school's 30 grand. I have yet to see that. Close, maybe, but the schools can use those numbers in a very different way than the net price calculator. It's a marketing tool. Oh, it's going to be 20 grand. Great, we apply. What if you don't get it? Like it sucked you in, and it says on there, estimate only.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's a lot more close than it is exact, but I've only seen one case where it was so drastically different that it really kind of put the brakes on things. And the reason that it was so drastically different was because of a known financial event that happened. Is more knowledge better than less?
Oh, sure.
Of course. But yes, families should know what the net price calculator is and the pros and the cons. 100% agree.
Shameless plug for College Planning Network Search Faster tool with True Cost Calculator will show it all. Jayson, this has been awesome, man. I appreciate your insight. I think it was a great conversation. I know our listeners will appreciate it. So thank you for coming on the show.
No, happy to be here and always happy to shine lights on what's too often mysterious, opaque, and try and make it a little bit more understandable for everyone.
All right. Appreciate it, Jayson. This has been Jayson Weingarten with the Ivy Coach.